talking to some clergy and some lay people about the direction of evangelization and what they felt was important, and how we would go about promoting evangelization and maintaining that as a priority, as a goal. And what I received was from the clergy and from the people was that there are obstacles to that in terms of something new, and there's always that whenever you have something new or something that we're trying to promote, there's a resistance there that because of age and because of the way we've always done things, and sometimes people have problems envisioning a new reality or a new way of doing things, that there's always going to be the resistance to that. But at the same time, from my own personal reflection and hearing what was coming back to me, evangelization has to be something that's clear, has to be simple, has to be something that's adaptable. Our 6 regions are different. Some are more different than others in terms of how you can do things and that. And so I think evangelization for me has to be something that's there, that's present, that's the vision needs to be pushed, needs to be always held as one of our keystones of what we are about. At the same time, though, it has to be something that's clear and that we can provide tools for people to be able to use and to adapt for their regions and their communities. You have to give people something that not only a spirit and a vision, but we have to give them concrete and simple, clear tools that they can use as well. Because oftentimes people, as we know, they learn and they experience things differently. Sometimes people have to go through the process and then look back at it, as opposed to being presented with this goal and this is how we're going to do it. And sometimes people just have to kind of go through the experience and then look back. Okay? So whatever we do with evangelization, once again, has to be, as I mentioned, simple, clear, to be something that I think needs to be held up as who we are as followers of Jesus, people who are representing the good news, always promoting that. So.
Well, my area of interest, as you've heard, is adult faith formation, and this is not a new initiative within the Archdiocese of Halifax, and I'm sure the former Diocese of Yarmouth, because as I did some background research, just about any major undertaking of the Archdiocese of Halifax, at least in the last 35 years, has underscored the need for adult faith formation. Last night when we had our small sharing groups, I mentioned a person in my life who was very instrumental in perhaps steering me in the right direction. This person was a member of my parish community who probably had no real formal education, or in fact even rudimentary education. He could read, and that was about all. But I still can see his face and remember him when I was a child. He was a bit deaf, and he would pray in the church. He would pray out loud because he didn't realize that anybody was listening to him. But, he would bare his soul. And I used to think, I wonder where he got that relationship with Jesus Christ, that he could speak to Jesus Christ unabashedly in his own unique way. And so I don't think that adult faith formation really is connected with one's level of formal education. We have the famous words of St. Anselm or St. Augustine, or both, I can't recall, or Karl Barth, throw him in there too, faith is education or theology is faith seeking understanding. That, the process of becoming familiar with the history of our church and the theology of the church doesn't necessarily produce faith. Faith comes first, and that's deeply ingrained, as I heard a priest say recently in a public interview. My faith doesn't depend upon any particular bishop or priest, but rather comes from someplace deep within me. So the challenges facing us, now that we are geographically an expanded archdiocese, is how do we develop and deliver a product that allows people to come together for faith formation and do so in a way that produces effective results. I've had some conversation with Beth about Atlantic School of Theology and the Koinonia program. And just recently we've been made aware of the power of the new areas of transmitting information by way of the internet and so on. Perhaps that's one of the areas where we can deliver an effective method of adult faith formation. We can now reach out to people right across Nova Scotia. And whereas one time people would come together at this unique and specific location for the purpose of education and sharing, now, from one location, we can reach out and bring people together, and instead of talking to 20 or maybe even less people, we can be delivering a product to hundreds of people. Not in isolation, but rather inviting them to come together so that not only is information transmitted, but the experience of faith and the sharing of that information takes place perhaps in a unique setting within each parish community that is able to, that has the resources to be able to do that. That's just one area of faith formation. I have a particular interest too in how we reach out to young people, especially when I say young, I mean those perhaps late teens through to the late 30s or early 40s. And that's a real challenge because we live in a secular world, and God is very much eclipsed by the type of society in which we live. And somehow we have to find a way of breaking through to them and allowing them to develop a personal and unique relationship with Jesus Christ that is hopefully shared and developed within the context of the family unit. So there's lots of challenges there. I don't have the answers. I'm not a theologian. Anyone who's heard me preach knows that for sure. But it's an area of interest that I have, and I look forward to the challenge that it places before me as Episcopal Vicar. And I rely on the expertise of others, especially those who have come together this morning in this role.
Back in 1976, I believe it was, I was on retreat in Chiclayo, Peru. I hadn't made a retreat for a while. It was kind of that different kind of place that I was. And I took a book along with me. It was a book by Edward Farrell. And in the introduction of the book, there was a little story about Farrell visiting a family member, a family in Ireland. He was from the U.S. And he said as he was walking with an old cousin of his, and it started to rain, so they found a place for shelter for a few moments until the shower passed. And as they sat there, the old man with him just sat and then went quiet, and so very obviously was praying. And so Farrell asked the question after the prayer time finished and the rain stopped. He said, you must really be kind of close to God and to just move right into prayer like that. And the old man said, the Father is very fond of me. Taking that book and reading it at the time, I only remember about two things that the retreat director said. I remember that line from the book and the power of it. And the whole book, that's the title of the book, by the way. The Father is very fond of me, the whole book. I thought I brought it back with me. I was looking for it in my bookshelf this morning, but I couldn't quite find it. But you might see it around. The book itself is not great, but that little story is wonderful. Powerful influence on me at that time on the retreat. And I think at the same time the bishop was making his in a very different place and time, or same time, but a different place. Go ahead, 10 years, and I'm in Amherst, and decided that I really felt a desire for a sabbatical, so I asked to go on one, and instead of just going on what was really a sabbatical, I went on to a program, a graduate program in study of liturgy at the University of Notre Dame, and I came to a very deep conclusion that sabbaticals and studies are very different kinds of things. And so suddenly I found myself in a program. I recall that I had to do this exam before I went to see if I had enough brains to go into the program and over to Mount A, and I had to do it on Saturday on Passion Sunday. And I was trying to get ready for this. I think I really blew the exam. However, they let me in because I think a letter of recommendation from the bishop at the time or something like that. Anyway, wonderful program, as some of you have heard me say more times than enough. And one of the thing that came to me, if it wasn't there before, our seminary program in liturgy was pretty weak. I think most seminaries are pretty weak in their liturgy studies. That's another story. But it was to bring together that very personal faith that grew from that experience 10 years before and grew in many different ways and bounced back and forth and didn't do it perfectly at all, of that personal relationship, and then with the communal expression of it and the public expression of it in liturgy. And that was the two things that are always sometimes in tension, but hopefully come together, of knowing who the Lord is for us personally, that relationship, and to celebrate that publicly and communally. And so my passion would be somehow to work at those together. The letter that the bishop just sent out the other week about as we was trying to bring our new translation and the new general instruction together and work out some of the little kinks and that kind of thing. There was a paragraph there that could all, I didn't miss it because I saw it bounced out at me, saying what the Eucharist is for us. It is both that personal encounter with the Lord Jesus and as well that communal gathering. And why we stand until all have received is a symbol of that, a very powerful symbol. So, the Eucharist, of course, is the core and center of that, and how we are called to enhance that and make it all that it's called to be. And we're going through a time of change in that, and we may feel even a little awkward yet. We presiders, I think for the most part, do, unless we really got our act together a lot better than I have. But we're working at it, and we do as a whole community as well. But the other thing is that liturgy is not just the celebration of the Eucharist. As I mentioned last night in our group, the style of morning and evening prayer that is prayed communally with singing, and what that can be, we haven't fully discovered yet, and we're kind of poking along at that. But there's others' expression of liturgy. Certainly what we attempt to do in the last part after we move through our Lenten time into the Triduum and all that takes in and the power of it. And then we have to make sure that it's not just kind of going through the motions, but that it really grabs hold of us. So I think in all that we're called to do in the new evangelization, in our desire to renew this church that we are as the Archdiocese of Halifax-Yar. The way we celebrate the liturgy is just so important that we do it the best we possibly can, that we are together on it as well, that we just don't go off in our different directions, but work together and use those good resources that are there and overcome some of the obstacles that are there. It connects as well with that whole area of justice. A little attempt that we're going to do at our own parish this year is to have an evening gathering where the work of development and peace that that call to solidarity with our sisters and brothers of the global south, and how that comes together as well. It all connects together, I think, and we can never divorce what we do liturgically, communally, in prayer, with those other great issues that we are called to as church. I don't know if